Welcome to another episode of Content Creators Unite, the show where we discuss all things content creation. If you want to learn how to grow your business using your blog, newsletters, books, and more, hey, you're in the right place. I'm your host, John Clements, and our guest for today's episode is Rebecca Boyle. Rebecca is a brand strategist and copywriter based in Northern Ireland. She supports B2Bs with branding guides that inform all aspects of their business for long-term success. Rebecca, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I am excited to talk to you today because we both share kind of the same career. We're both writers. We're both, do editing and writing work. And so I want to dig into that for our listeners. But before we get to that, I want to know a little bit about you. Can you just share a little bit about your background and how you got to do what it is that you do?
I always loved writing and I did my degree in journalism. And then from that, it was very hard to get a job in that. So I kind of done articles and like travel magazines and things like that while doing different jobs. And at one stage, I retrained as a chef and did that for a while. And then I got into copywriting. I can't even remember how I came across it, but I saw it somewhere and thought this sounds great. There's a lot of journalism within copywriting that overlaps, so I really enjoyed that. And for about the past 3 years or so, I've just been doing that myself, and working with businesses kind of all over the world in lots of different industries. So it's been really varied and interesting.
Nice. So what is it exactly about copywriting that makes you excited, that makes you, because I can tell just from your webpage, which we'll link in the show notes, you've really got it dialed in. You're really, I can tell this is what you were born to do. So what is it that makes you so excited about that?
I really think it's the psychology behind copywriting. With like content writing, it's not exactly the same because it's more for entertainment and stuff. And journalism, with that, it's kind of more formulaic. But with copywriting, it's about really getting into the mind of the people who are going to be reading your content, and kind of really understanding where they are, what they want to be, their motivations, all that kind of thing. So I think it's the psychology of it that I just find really interesting, and the fact that words can really influence people and have like quite a lot of power over all of us. So I think that's just really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And that kind of leads into what I wanted to talk with you about today, because I know psychology plays a huge part in branding, and that's kind of one of
Mhm.
your specialties. Can you just kind of talk for a minute about branding and why is it so important? If I'm just a one man shop doing my thing, why is it so important that I have a brand and that it's consistent?
Yeah, so it's so important because it's the perception, how people perceive your business. So it helps you stand out from competitors and make you memorable. It gives you a unique personality, so that again, people will trust you. They keep seeing you show up in the same way, and they resonate with that, and so they'll go to you over a competitor. It helps for all sorts of things. For example, when it comes to like mergers and stuff as well, when you become a bigger business, when you sell the business, the perception of your brand, not just the financial amount of it, but the perception of that brand will help you make more money as well, and sell your brand for more, sell your company for more. So it informs all kind of decisions in your business, what kind of services you should be offering, um, basically how you come across to your audience, and what they're willing to pay for your service or your product.
Nice. Yeah. So I think you're right on where there's that element of trust and relationship building. So it's not just about having a cool logo or using hip terms, although you might need to do that, but it's, yeah, really about that relationship building.
Yeah, definitely. And some brands will of course use, hip language, and there has been a bit of pushback from brands doing that because people know when you're not being genuine. They understand that that's not what you would normally say. And so if you do that, it doesn't look good because they know that's not natural to you. So and doing things kind of for the sake of it, for example, sustainability, or putting up the rainbow flag on Pride and things like that. People know that you're just doing that as a kind of gimmick, and you can see that kind of thing a mile off.
Yeah. Yeah, that does strike me, the gimmicky nature, especially of the bigger corporations, because,
Yeah.
like, I mean, we all know they don't care. They care about making money. That's what they care about. Like,
Yeah.
so, so, but I
Oh,
want to, yeah,
a lot of them do,
yep,
yeah.
yeah. And maybe I'm too cynical. I don't know. I've been around the block too many times, I guess. But yeah, like authenticity, especially like now with AI and all that stuff, like, being authentic, being relatable, um, talking like a human being, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are so important. So I want to talk a little bit. So let's say that I'm a brand new entrepreneur. Let's say that I just started my business. And I'm like, boy, I love that. I want people to trust me. I want to come across as authentic. I want to attract the right kind of client with my branding, but I don't even know where to start. Like, what would you tell someone, your friend at the pub, who just is like, I want to start this business and I don't know how to do branding? What would you tell them?
I would say, write like yourself. I know a lot of my clients, when they're writing LinkedIn or anything like that, they automatically go to censor themselves. So I would say kind of write like it's not going to be seen by anybody, first of all, because that will be your natural way of speaking. And you could even imagine that you're speaking to a friend when you're writing it and what you would say to them so that you're not adding in a lot of jargon or, details that you just would be natural to say. So I would say try and do that and not censor yourself. And from that you can understand the way you speak and try and keep that consistent.
Yeah, I like that advice of like speaking to a friend or like choosing one person to speak to. I think a lot of people fall into this trap of I'm trying to speak to everyone, and when you speak to everyone, you end up speaking to no one. So yeah, if you can just think about your friend or your ideal customer or whoever and speak to them, I think you'll probably see a lot better results.
Yeah, and if you even think about your company like a person, whether it's, based off your own personality or, someone else that you admire who you think your company should be that type of personality, if there's a few traits, like maybe they're a positive person, maybe they're really supportive, maybe they're funny, whatever it is, those few words, if you even have those down and say, is this the way I'm speaking every time you write something, and see if it's matching, the personality that you want to come across.
Yeah, and I think this kind of gets into something I noticed in looking at your website is you talk a lot about the tone of voice.
Mhm.
And so I would love for you to speak for a little bit about that because as much as we want to be ourselves when we're branding our companies, like the fact is I talk differently to my kids than I do to my wife than I do to a potential client, um, and so there is some tone of voice and like words I choose to use and not use. I'm just curious about your perspective because I know you do a lot of work in this area with companies. Just explaining like what tone of voice is and how to approach it as a company.
Yeah, so basically tone of voice is it's kind of like the equivalent of the verbal equivalent of your visual aspects. So all your logos, your type, your colors, typography, all that. So your tone of voice is the verbal aspect of that. It's how what you say, kind of the grammar you use, your main topics that you're going to be talking about over and over again. It's about how you're coming across basically and making sure that that is consistent. So, for example, in the tone of voice guides that I do, we set out the goals for the business, their mission, what they're ultimately trying to do, what they want to do in the future, how they want to come across. So, for example, we talked about those kind of personality traits. So, are they a positive person? Are they sarcastic? Are they, all these different types of things, and have a list of those. And what I do is create a framework. So it's like a practical framework or a checklist that when they're writing content, they can go through it and say, okay, am I speaking this way? Am I doing this? Am I speaking in a positive tone of voice? Have I framed it a certain way? And so that will help them to do it consistently. And that's just really important because you are building a personality. You want to come across as someone people remember, that they trust, like all those things we talked about. And so otherwise you're going to blend in with people. For example, I have a client who's an environmental consultancy, and when I was creating their tone of voice and I looked at competitors, a lot of competitors, spoke quite sophisticated. They were quite formal. They were quite cold. There was no real personality. And so that was an opportunity for my clients to be a bit more personable, be more friendly, a bit more down to earth, explain maybe more complicated terms and that kind of thing. So they could set themselves apart from all the other agencies out there. And so that's kind of why it's important as well.
Yeah, I like that idea of setting yourself apart by like not using jargon. Again, as you know, since we're both writers, like that's something that I like crusade against is don't
Yeah.
keep jargon for your staff meetings, or just better yet, don't use it at all.
Yeah.
Like use words that people understand. So
Absolutely.
so you said you do these tone of voice, I guess audits or reports or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call them. Does that extend to down to the level of be sure to use these words and not use these other words, or is it more higher level, or does it have both?
Yeah, so it can have both. It
Mhm.
depends on what the client wants. But yeah, so the tone of voice guide would kind of set out all those things that I talked about. And then there would be a style guide. And I'm sure it's already, like the Chicago style guide, AP style guide, all those ones for newspapers. And it's the words you should use, the spellings you should use, whether it's American or British English, whether you're going to use the Oxford comma, all these kinds of things, emojis. So the style guide will break all of that down, swear and everything like that. So it'll really break it down how to use all those things. So you can just flip through it and have a look, and you should know what way to spell things, what way to say things, and everything like that.
Yeah. So I'm curious actually on your thoughts. This is a bit of a nerdy question. I apologize in advance, but because it's something I think about, as a writer, as an editor. Um, just as something as simple as like, are we going to use the Oxford comma or not? And for most people who maybe don't do our line of work, they think, well, who cares?
Yeah.
So what do you like? What are your thoughts on like why are these little minutiae so important?
Yeah, because all those things that may seem unimportant, but all those things add up to giving an impression of you. So I always put the Oxford comma in, but that's just me. If I'm writing for a client that's maybe a bit more fun, a bit more conversational, I won't add it in for them, and that'll be part of their style guide not to use it because it is more traditional to use it, it is more formal. And so if that's the way you want to come across, then that's great, use it. Whereas if you're, a maybe more fun brand like Duolingo and stuff that uses slang terms and stuff, then you don't want to use kind of more traditional, grammar like that, as all that will add up to give the impression that you're a bit more traditional when that's not what you want.
Yeah, I think like it kind of goes back to what you're saying at the beginning of the episode about just it's all about psychology, really,
Yeah.
right? It's all these little things that add up subconsciously, even that
Yeah.
that tells something about you to your client, and you want to make sure it's the right thing.
Exactly, yeah, and all those things add up, exclamation marks and, emojis and all that, and as I say, slang, all of that that really will give an impression of who you are as a person or a company.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I heard you say that you also, in addition to like advising companies and brands, helping with the branding, you also, it sounds like you also do writing for them. So whether it's a blog post or, whatever it might be. So uh, when you have a piece of content that you've written, let's say you've written, I don't know, I'm just going to take an example, 2000 word blog post maybe for a company. What what does success look like for you? How do you know when you sit back at the end of the day, okay, I did a good job with this article. This article succeeded. What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's kind of what the company wants. If you're lucky and the company says, okay, this is what we want, either from this particular piece of writing or as a general goal, what we want to is maybe increase people signing up for our product by 10% or whatever it is. So whatever their goal is, that's so important that you personalize it to them because yes, you might get traffic to your blog if you're writing a blog, but are they converting? Are they, staying on your website? Are they doing what you want them to do? So it's what the goal is that the company wants and trying to make sure that you do that. And if you don't, I'll monitor it afterwards And if it's not doing what we want it to do, then re-looking at it and seeing if maybe you need to update it a bit or add something else into it, and just trying to do that to reach whatever goal you're trying to get to.
Nice. So will most companies you work with have actual like percentage goals they're trying to hit or
They're usually a bit more vague than that,
yeah.
and I will try and help them to maybe be a bit more specific
Mhm.
too. For like I do a bit of LinkedIn management and I'll say, okay, how many, leads do you want? And then off those, how many people do you need to convert? Because that'll tell you then how many people you need to be connecting with and reaching out to on a daily basis or a monthly basis or whatever. So it's trying to make that specific, and usually companies need a bit of help with that because they're kind of vague on, we just want more people signing up for this, or we want more people buying more, whatever it is. So generally you need to get a bit more specific.
Okay, so it sounds like in addition to all of your other services, you can also kind of step in and help with like SEO and some of these, maybe more particular metrics that are involved.
Yeah, because I think it's important, that if I do, writing for someone, that it is going to help them, especially because it is, a lot of the time it is copywriting. There is supposed to be an action that people are taking from that. And so I want to make sure that my clients get that. Otherwise there's no point to hiring me. It's just copy on a web page that no one's taken much notice of. So it's important for me to make sure that they get, the result that they want.
Yeah, I appreciate that due diligence. That's not something that that every person in our position would offer. So that's actually a pretty good value that you add, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I suppose when I first started out, you weren't always able to do that because sometimes people just came to you with a blog and were like, "Okay, write this," and you done that, and then that was it. And it doesn't help you either because you don't know whether it was successful, whether it helped them. So it is good as a writer as well, knowing whether it done its job or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we kind of dig into that a little bit, one thing I noticed on your website is that you offer a homepage checklist for sale. And
Mhm.
so I think it might cover some of these topics. I'm not really sure. I'd love you to tell us a little bit about that checklist and maybe just explain like why it might be worth, spending, I think, 20 pounds to go pick up a copy.
Yes, so I created that when I know a lot of smaller business owners that write their own website, and that's completely fine. You don't need to use a copywriter. I would advise it, but a lot of people don't have that budget, and that's fine, and so they do it themselves. And so I wanted a way of kind of helping them, because some websites you go on and you think, oh my goodness, they really need help with this. It's not good. And so I created a kind of checklist of going through essential parts that you would need on your website, most people would need. So for example, including social proof, which would be testimonials or clients that you've worked with, logos of them, or any stats you might have, and things like that. So including that on it. And it would give you different bits, how to create a headline, and having a bit of an about section and stuff, and making sure your call to actions are on there, and what kind of words you should use for those. So it kind of breaks all that down on the different sectors that you should have on your homepage. And it gives you like a little wireframe of a design of the way you can lay it out, and why you should do it that way. And also a little checklist as well, so that you can tick everything off as you're going along to do it yourself. So if someone hasn't got the budget, they can have a look at that, and hopefully that will help them create their own copy.
Yeah, and I love that idea too because for our listeners, like you think, well, I said, I got to pay for it. Yeah, you got to pay for it, but I think it's a very small investment.
Mm.
And now I don't have to go spend hours trying to find this information online, trying to figure out who to trust, trying to sort through the conflicting information. I can go right to an expert. I can basically pick their brain for very minimal cost, and I can get myself down the road until I can get to the point where I can just go out and hire Rebecca. Like, I think that's a wonderful, you know, opportunity that's out there.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to do, because with local businesses, I have just said, look, I'll do a bit of work for you here for free, just to kind of sort your website out, and to try and help more local businesses, because I'm the same, where you'll start kind of on your own, and you can't be an expert in everything, and so it was just a way to try and help people that just don't have the budget, and are going to have to do it themselves
Yeah,
for a while anyway.
exactly. But I do, I mean, just to all the business owners out there, especially if you're new, like make it a priority to invest. Like it's
Mhm.
okay to spend money to invest, especially in yourself like this, where you're basically saying, I'm going to teach myself this skill. It's going to pay you so much more than whatever minimal cost, you know, you might have had to pay for that knowledge. So yeah,
Yeah,
totally. We'll have it. Well, again, link in the show notes. Totally check that out. If that's something that you feel like you need to take that first step with. That's a great way to do it.
yeah,
Um, so Rebecca, as much as I could talk about writing and copywriting all day long, because that's, similar to what I do,
yeah.
I want to just kind of change gears a bit because I want to get to know you just a little bit better, because I think that it's just as important to know the person behind the business. So
Totally.
when you're not working, what do you like to do in beautiful Northern Ireland?
Yep. Well, I would agree. It is very beautiful. Yes. So I have two dogs, and a lurcher and a German Shepherd. And I love going to the beach, even though it is nearly always raining. But we still enjoy going to the beach, and because it's everywhere you go in Northern Ireland, you're about half an hour from a forest, a beach, anything like that. So I really enjoy doing that. I love going to the latest bakeries and any new opened cafes and things like that, because I did used to be a chef for a bit. So I love my sweet stuff. So I really love doing that. And I also love F1 that you'd mentioned earlier. I watched that. I kind of got into that through my husband, and I really enjoy watching it now. It's the only sport I will watch.
Or do you just watch for the crashes, or do you actually like the racing?
No, I do watch the racing, yeah. I do actually enjoy it. I think it helps when you kind of know the people, and it's all about, I suppose it's similar to copywriting, where it's the stories that are involved. If you don't know who's in the car, the background to it, then it doesn't really mean much to you. But when you know the stories and the history of the drivers and stuff, it actually makes it a lot more worthwhile to watch.
Nice. And do you have like a favorite driver or team?
Um, I do like Oscar Piastri at the minute. He's one of my favorites. And I do like Max, and I'm not really a Lewis Hamilton fan, even though I'm in the UK, but I'm not a big fan of his. But yeah,
Nice. That's cool. So you've also just, I mean, even just the brief amount of time we've spent talking together, you got a pretty varied background, right? From being a chef to doing copywriting and a number of other things. Is there a piece of wisdom or like a life lesson you've learned? Could be work related, could be life related that you could just share with our audience just to make them just 1% better tomorrow than they are today.
yeah, I think I don't know if I'm the best person to give advice, but I will. I would say being persistent. I find, in my business and just life in general, I do some lung health campaigning in my spare time as well. And I find that persistence really will get you far. It can be very frustrating at times when you feel nothing's happening, and when your business or and personal. But I think just keep at it, and again, kind of being consistent, same as like with your tone of voice. If you just keep at it, be consistent, then eventually you'll get the results.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Just gotta, it's almost like you have to trust the process and you have to do the work before you see the results a lot of times. But if you hang in
Yeah.
there, you'll get pretty far.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely seen results from that myself. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. I'm sure there are people out there who want to get to know you a little bit better, maybe connect with you to maybe send some business your way. Where can people go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so the website would be the main one. It's rebeccaboylecopywriting.com. And then on LinkedIn as well, Rebecca Boyle, you'll find me, and feel free to chat. I'm pretty nosy since I have a background in journalism, so I love hearing other people's stories and how they got into their businesses and stuff. So yeah, send me a message. I'm happy to chat anytime.
Perfect. And like I said, we'll have that information in the show notes, so you can just go down there and click on it and get access to Rebecca. Well, again, Rebecca, just thanks a ton. It's been a great conversation today.
No, thanks very much. It's been really interesting, and all your other interviews are just they're so useful and valuable. So it's really great to be on.
Thank you. I will take free advertising any day of the week. I appreciate that. And so, to our listeners, if you enjoyed our show today, and I hope you did because I know I did, go ahead and, like, comment, subscribe, do all the things so you don't miss the next episode. I bring on the best people I can find. I pick their brains. I find that value, and then you get to have it for free. And how good of a deal is that? So with that, we'll see you next time on the Content Creators Unite podcast.